Guys, welcome to another Rapport Wednesday. We know that Auburn baseball wrapped things up. Congratulations on making history, getting to the Super Regional, but we have a lot to talk about still. Of course, here with Mike Gittens, as we do every Wednesday. Mike, well, let's start there with the baseball team. Overall, your reflection, they make history yet again. Didn't get to Omaha, but still a year to be proud of for the Auburn Tigers, right?
Hosted a Super Regional for the first time in the history of Auburn baseball, but ultimately it came to an unceremonious end. They're losing to a Coastal Carolina team that hasn't lost in a really, really long time. I think it was 24 straight wins or something like that.
They haven't lost since like January or something like that.
This is a really good baseball team that they played that first game. I was there for that. They did a great job after the rain delay coming back, pushing that game to extra innings. But ultimately, just too many unforced errors. This is still a really good young baseball team that has a bright future. So look, Butch Thompson's got it rolling here with Auburn baseball. Plainsman Park was an incredible venue to host a regional, a super regional, and a regional. So fans enjoyed themselves. They showed up, and it was a great turnout, but ultimately just didn't end the way they wanted it to.
And look, at least it's a step in the right direction. Butch, the program is in good hands with Butch right there. We know that he's going to get the talent and hopefully have that place rocking next season. Now, we got to talk about some big picture stuff. A big court case. There was a settlement here, and obviously a decision that is going to affect all of college sports. A lot to dig into. One of the biggest takeaways we saw, universities can now directly pay players. Your overall reaction to that decision, Mike?
Well, as of July 1st, we're going to see a lot of changes. Yep. Those checks are going to start to flow straight from the athletic department to the players' bank accounts. But look, this was not unexpected. Judge Claudia Wilkins went back to the drawing table, said, hey, fix this walk-on issue. You guys have to make this right for the kids who got cut, Rex, essentially in anticipation of schools trying to get under roster limits. So you have new roster limits that they will have to eventually adhere to. But what's happening here is that college athletics is changing, and this is going to be the biggest change that we've seen in quite some time with athletes getting. Now, part of that settlement is previous athletes going back to 2016 are going to receive retroactive payments for the years that they participated in college athletics and did not get compensation. There's also a part of this ruling that defines what those walk-ons are. They're calling them designated student athletes.
Got it.
And so as a DSA, you are protected from now until the time you are out of college. They're protecting the eligibility of those athletes. So DSAs will not count toward the new roster limit.
Got it.
So if you are a walk-on and your sport, like football, went down from an average roster size of that, in football you had 85 scholarships, but you had an average roster size of 125, which means there were like 40-something walk-ons. Right. The new roster limit for football is 105. So you're going to get 20 more scholarships, but can't have any walk-ons. Well. You can have existing walk-ons that won't count toward that 105 until their eligibility is out. And that's kind of the compromise that they came to making sure that you didn't put a bunch of athletes out in the cold. I think that college sports is losing something amazing getting rid of walk-ons. Rex, that moment where the head football coach comes out and says, this kid that worked his butt off, going to class, maybe had to take out loans to go to school, earned a scholarship, and the whole team gathers around him and is jumping up and down and they're excited. We lose that with this. And I hope that as this thing progresses, they take a look at that and make sure that we bring that back to college athletics, because I think it's one of the better parts and one of the more wholesome parts of college sports.
I mean, we saw Heisman winners with that. Baker Mayfield. Again, you guys know that I'm from Texas and I can't stand the Sooners, but Baker Mayfield is a guy who is easy to root for. You're right. There's a moment where, look, the season may go one way or another, or your team just needs a jolt. There's something to be said about that young man, young woman who's, as you said, taking out loans, doing all the work, maybe even working a job and staying academically eligible. And now that's just taken away. It seems like there's a professionalism here that is taken away from a lot of that. I agree with you. That is really hard to swallow right there. Is that one thing you're not liking too much about this whole decision here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really difficult. Again, they're not going to get everything right, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to understand. The first iterations of this are going to have some kinks that they need to work out. Same way they're starting at 20.5 for the initial cap. And that's going to go up every year because you've got to adjust to the market here every year. So it's going to be it's going to be a journey, I think, for the decision makers. Now, one other thing to note in the House settlement is that they're recognizing the defunct Pac-12 as a Power 5 conference.
Really?
Yes. They're recognizing the Pac-12 because at the time of the settlement, they were a Power 5 conference. So they want to make sure any schools that were a part of that are not left out in the cold.
So
as far
Oregon,
as
UCLA, all those Big Ten schools now.
Yeah, they're recognizing the Pac-12, even though it no longer exists. But look, the SEC and the Big Ten are uniquely positioned to take advantage of this. And when you look at the schools that have the resources, we covered this on our show, above and beyond the $20.5 million, that's most of the schools in the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, if you're the Big 12, you got a lot more schools riding that line. The ACC, same thing, right? Where their collectives may be going away because they don't expect to fill that $20.5 million pot, at least for the first year. So there are a lot of numbers that are going to have to be crunched. People, everyone's going to have to figure out how they're going to fundraise. I want to stress to the listeners, collectives aren't going away. They're here to stay for the bigger schools.
So that was my next question. On to Victory, obviously doing a great job for Auburn. That's probably going to stay within the foreseeable future, right?
Right, because there's no mandate on how that $18 million really needs to be spent. Right. There's 2.5 of it that goes to scholarships for the Olympic sports, and then the remaining 18, they can give it all to football if they want to.
Wow.
So you may need your collective to provide deals for the other Olympic sports, or above and beyond what is available to football from that pot, right?
Gotcha.
So, if Hugh Freeze says, you guys have allocated $13 million and I need $15 million, well, you may need On to Victory to come through with another $2 million to provide a deal for your star quarterback that you want to land or whatever recruit you're going after. This is why collectives aren't going away. I've spoken to the people at On to Victory. They feel very confident about the direction and the future of the collective under these new rules, and so they're here to stay.
And now my next question is, so we loved NIL because I think it was overdue for the student athletes who put in so much work. And it kind of, well, in theory, was supposed to even the playing field, right? Now, we're not saying that I love you guys at South Alabama, but it is going to be a long journey for them to get on the level of like an Alabama or an Auburn. But is this more of a divider, a forced divider, like putting Auburn, these SEC schools, way ahead of the pack compared to the G5 schools in the state?
Yeah, I think so. Look, the rich are going to get richer with this thing. And that's, for all the people who thought this is going to help the little guy catch up. No, the little guy never had any money, Rex.
Nope.
And he still doesn't have any money. What he has is maybe an opportunity to spend a little bit money to woo that one big time recruit away, but for the most part, they're still going to get outspent the same way they got outspent before this, right?
Yeah.
Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, these universities are spending their money on facilities and things that the athletes see when they come on a recruiting trip. Well, now they're putting the money directly in the athlete's pocket, so you're just kind of redirecting where it's going, and you still have to have money for both. Or, if you don't have the money for both, you've got to choose between one or the other.
Right.
It's going to be, the division of assets here is the same, right? The rich are going to continue to thrive in this system, and what they need to do is they need to create parity through things like the college football playoff to make sure that if we're going to see a Cinderella, that we do have a chance to see that. I don't know if you remember a long time ago, in Major League Baseball, they have this, right? When the Marlins won the World Series with like the lowest roster salary ever.
I think like the entire roster of the Marlins was worth like one New York Yankee.
Yeah.
And it was something ridiculous like that.
And they won the World Series, and they're saying, look, in our sport, you can compete without spending a bunch of money if you develop and you do other things at a high level. That's not a reality in college football, right? Right now, the big schools were already getting those five-star athletes, and it shows up at the college football playoff level every single time. We saw it in Texas versus Arizona State, where at the end of the game, it's Quinn Ewers, the big-time five-star, making the throw in overtime to win the game for them. Meanwhile, Kenny Dillingham, after, is saying, guys, if you want to see us back here, we need money.
Yeah.
We can't do this again. This is a one-off.
I know at UConn, they're saying the same thing. You want UConn football to be relevant? You got to spend the money, and it's just the reality of the world. I know it's a lot to take in right now. And the landscape of college sports, especially college football, is changing. How do you feel about this change?
I like it. Look, it was long overdue, and it was the train that you were never going to stop.
Right.
This was coming, and they kicked the can down the road so long that they've got a bunch of problems they could have solved had they address this more directly. But now it's here. And so, look, whether we like it or not, it's here, but it was always coming. And I think that's the thing that a lot of the powers that be are realizing, where a lot of the traditional NCAA controls they're seeing, once this money gets involved, you're going to see the power change hands. Greg Sankey might be the most powerful person in college athletics. I think he is the most powerful person in college athletics. And the Big Ten commissioner, Jim Delaney, same thing. These guys are driving they're driving the ship, man. They've got both hands on the wheel here. So I think that it's a good thing. But we just have to regulate it. We got to figure out what we're doing with it along the way. It's not going to be perfect in the beginning, but hopefully we'll get to a version of this that benefits not only the student athlete, but also the universities, and keeps the focus at least somewhat on education.
It should be, at least at that point. We're all here to go to school eventually at some point. Mike, thank you so much for breaking it down. Obviously, a lot coming our way when it comes to the changes here, but also you guys gearing up for SEC Media Days. Tell us a little bit about that, how you guys get ready for that.
We will be in Atlanta at the College Football Hall of Fame this year, covering SEC Media Days. Hugh Freeze goes on Tuesday this year. So even with Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference, they're keeping it to Monday through Thursday. But we'll be there all week bringing you guys live interviews. I can't wait for that.
Stay tuned for that, because obviously the football season's only getting closer. Mike, where can people find you? Always do great work at the War Report. Where can people find you? Follow
us on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gittens, and on Instagram at Mike Gittens _ We're at the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. All right, guys. I know it was a lot of 10,000-foot point of view stuff, and when a court decision like this comes down, we have to talk about it. Mike does a great job helping the average guy, like this guy, understand everything that's going on. That does it for this week of War Report Wednesday. We'll see y'all next week.